Welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of Among the Clouds. Today's guest is Alister Douglas from the band Blush Response. Known for his 2018 album Hearts Grow Dull, he's just released a double single called Molasses and Vertigo. If you're a fan of Alister's and Blush Response, you'll hopefully enjoy the interview. Stay tuned. Hey, Alister, thanks for coming and doing the show with me. How's it going over there?
Yeah, good. Just woke up, but yeah, we'll see how we go.
Just woke up. I'm gonna be going to bed in like 2 hours when we're done. So,
Take a bit of doing to get the time zones right.
you're in the future. Am I still alive at that point?
I think so. I think this is how it works.
I don't see any flaws. People might know you from Blush Response. Um, yeah, you guys started in 2014, correct?
Yeah, around about then. Yeah.
How did that start off?
Yeah, I think I was playing in there's a couple other bands around that time. And most of that time I was sort of just like I wasn't having a big sort of creative input into those bands. So I think like Blush Response was kind of my creative output. But it wasn't a band, it was just like a home like recording project for me.
Right.
Yeah.
What came first, becoming a musician or hearing Shoegaze Dream Pop?
I was a musician for a while before I sort of heard shoegaze, got into shoegaze. I was playing, in a bunch of different bands for several years, mostly like indie pop kind of twee stuff,
Okay.
with not like distortion wall of sound stuff, like real sort of twee. So it was a while before I got into shoegaze.
And were you singing at that time as well?
Not really. Like if I could avoid it, I would. Like backup, minimal backups. Mostly playing guitar, a little bit of drums. Yeah.
Around what year did you become, a musician?
I was playing music kind of throughout childhood, but like in terms of playing in bands, I think my second last year of high school, I joined a band.
Hmm.
And it was like just some friends from school. I think the music teacher placed us together, and that continued after high school a little bit. We played for a few years after, but then after that, sort of just found, you know, other friends playing music that was like my type of music. Yeah.
And then when did you discover shoegaze or dream pop or adjacent bands that
Mm.
led you to that?
So it was probably like 2007 or 8, I think. I was seeing a girl at the time, and when we first started sort of dating, she gave me this huge stack of CDs, amongst which, I mean, there was lots of different stuff in there, but Loveless was in there. And that was kind of my first, I mean, as it is with so many people, that was my first kind of introduction. And I remember being kind of like confused by it at first. I didn't sort of immediately find like, well, this is my genre. I was like, oh, what the heck is this?
Hmm.
I think it was sometimes that sort of really clicked for me for the first time, because I was really into kind of like singer songwriter stuff like Elliott Smith and Bright Eyes, and that song just has enough of that. Like it's got the acoustic guitar, like the kind of soft, like kind of Beatles-esque vocals, and that was kind of the click for me. And then after that, the rest of the album kind of fell in place. So that was like my introduction to it. Yeah.
Like I had said earlier, you start Blush Response in 2014. You're still in other bands at the same time?
I think around that time, I was in a band called Alphabet, which was like a kind of a 60s pop kind of group, kind of jazz informed, I guess. I was the only non-jazz player in it, but it was fun. And another group called Wild Oats, which was kind of like a trio, kind of just like indie pop stuff. So I think those were the two bands I was in. Oh no, and I was doing this like solo electronic project called Furs, which is like kind of like M83 washed out kind of stuff. So it had
Mhm.
like elements of shoegaze, I guess, in that, because it was like lots of synths and like quiet vocals. When I was recording the EP for Furs, my
I'll
computer
believe it.
messed up, and I got really frustrated because I just almost lost like a whole EP, and so I kind of put that on the back burner, and then decided to do something that was completely not synth and computery focused, and do the songs that I had sort of lying around in the back of my mind for Blush Response.
You release, I'm calling them EPs, but Telltale in 2014, uh, Dead Air EP in 2014. Is that the first two things that was
Yeah,
recorded under that name?
yeah. So um, Telltale came first, and I did it really quickly without sort of getting too sort of carried away in the nitty gritty of the mixing and production and stuff. Just kind of whatever felt right, and just kind
Hmm.
of put it out there because immediate gratification. I like it.
Sure.
um, and then kind of as soon as that was finished, so I'd had some of those songs lying around for a long time. But as soon as that was finished, started working on Dead Air, which was like mostly new. So the City Will Eat Itself existed as a previous song, but the rest of them were entirely new. So that was kind of like a clean slate, I guess.
And then Hearts Grow Dull LP 2018. Am I missing something in between there for those 4 years?
No, you're not missing anything for 4 years. 4 years of just like intense writing and recording and re-recording and scrapping and re-recording, and yeah, no, it was a whole process.
I have the CD, and I know it's got your name on there, and then there's some other people on there as far as like someone plays bass on Cruel. I believe it was a girl, but I don't know her name. And
That was
then
Emily. So Emily was the first bassist for Blush Response.
like walk me through the process. Is that mostly a solo thing, and you're having some people help out, but you were playing live at that time or soon after the album comes out, correct?
Yeah, yeah. So the band sort of formed, I think, like early 2015. So like the band had been together for a long time. And I think, in fact, we had like several lineup changes during the course of the album being recorded and being released and stuff. So I think the way I kind of work is best by myself. Like I don't write in like a linear fashion. So by the time I've got a song I'm happy with, a lot of it's already kind of fleshed out. So there's not
Hmm.
a lot of room for other input, at least at that time. So like while the band was going, it was very much like a solo bedroom written kind of project in my own time. Yeah.
Are some of the lineup changes because of that? Because people aren't getting their input and they're just saying, it's almost a Billy Corgan type thing, or and I'm
I
not
don't.
trying to point you in a negative way whatsoever. I'm
No, no,
just,
no.
you
Yeah.
know,
No, it's a particular thing, like being in a band where there's like someone with a like creative vision that they want to achieve, and it's kind of they're specific about it. And that's kind of how I initially thrived. I think at first as a musician is joining bands where there was that. So I was kind of playing a role, a part. So it's kind of how I've always functioned on one side or another. But I don't think there was any like I don't think I played with anyone who was like overly like disappointed about the fact that there wasn't much input.
mhm.
And there's always flexibility live. Like people can like change stuff and put their own spin on it live. But in terms of contributing to the record, no, I don't think so.
So my introduction to you was the Hearts Grow Dull LP. So I had not heard Telltale or Dead Air before that. And in fact, it was just me. Just I happened to be listening to DKFM when the song "Cruel" was on, came on, and I'm very picky to the point where Chrissy makes fun of me that I don't like anything and blah 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 blah. But when I heard "Cruel," it made me go, "Whoa, who is this?" and reach for either my phone or computer. But definitely, I looked it up, and that was I was taken aback by it. It had energy to it. It was good. It sounded professional.
That's it.
So then I don't remember was the album out at that time because I know it was. I think it was out.
We did release "Cruel" as like a advanced single for the album, so it might have been just before, or it might have been after.
I don't think it was out yet, to be honest with you, because I think I ordered it. Did it even come from you? Did I order it from you?
Yeah, yeah. No, you would have.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
The album was released in April of 2018, but for several reasons, the vinyl took. Wait, did you get a vinyl or a CD?
It's a CD.
Oh, okay, now the vinyl took several months after that, but yeah, no, probably beforehand.
I'm sure you were talking to Chrissy at some point because of DKFM and
Mm.
whatnot. And at some point, we reached out to you to do a remix for us for our Bright Smiles album. And you put a different spin on it, more of an electronic spin that we were pleasantly surprised about. Because at first we thought you were going to kind of just make it a blush response type thing, but you very early on said, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to
Yeah.
do something else. And at first I was like, oh, okay, that's not what I was expecting, but in a good way, it turned out great. So we appreciate that. And, it's funny because hearing your band or whatever, I was a fan of it, but I have no idea if you know who my band is or anything, that I do. So I wasn't going to assume that you even want to do a remix or anything. And it's not like we were paying you or anything. It was
No,
obviously
I'd known
just
about Whimsical for like just through the Facebook groups and just the general like online shoegaze community. I'd known Whimsical at that point for a couple of years, I think. And I'd like, been in touch with Chrissy a lot about just various songwriting stuff, the Churchill Garden stuff, DKFM stuff. So no, yeah, I definitely knew who you lot were.
because you did guest vocals on a Churchill Garden song, though, right? Didn't you do?
Yeah, I've
Okay,
done
that's good.
one or two now. I think one
Okay.
and one wasn't, one's yet to be released or something.
Okay, so that's right. Because I think I remember I said something to Chrissy and I said, "Hey, have you heard this Blush Response band?" And she said, "Oh, he did vocals on a song for Andy and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, okay, so that's right. That's how I remember." It was like, "Oh, of course, you already know it." So,
Yeah. But now with that remix, like I don't know, it's always weird being asked to do a remix. One, like it's flattering and it's cool, but like I haven't done a lot of remixing, and the idea of quote unquote remixing something as a shoegaze band feels odd to me because when I hear a song like your song, like I'm not the most confident guitarist or drummer or singer or whatever. Like I can do it to the point that I'm happy with it. But when I hear someone's song that's so fully realized, I can't think of much to add that would be more interesting or like not better, but you know what I mean? So
sure.
that was kind of why I went that route with the electronic stuff. I kind of went back to my old Furs stuff a bit because I knew that I could bring something different there and something a
Hmm.
bit interesting because at some point, my reverby guitar is just going to be reverby guitar that's not particularly different or like more interesting than yours. So like,
But yeah, so we greatly appreciated you doing it. We had asked like 4 or 5 artists that we liked to do remixes, and all of them had said yes, but one of them never ended up happening. When you were starting Blush Response, and you discovered this music, 6, 7 years prior. Um, how did you go about gear wise and songwriting wise to kind of develop that style? Were you going out and buying pedals? Were you um, incorporating synths or whatever? But what were you doing to try to branch from, say, you were doing twee to, okay, now I'm gonna start trying to do some sort of variation of shoegaze?
like while the first Blush Response recordings were in 2014, I was kind of like trying to arrive at that sound for several years or like play with that sound for several years before that. And there's like a few things that sort of specifically come to mind. And one is like in 2000 and like 6 or 7, I think one of the bands I was in at the time was recording with a local producer here. And we had this, it was like in no way shoegaze at all, but we had this song that had like a bridge section, and we couldn't really work out what to do in that section. We hadn't really written anything convincing. And I remember the engineer, the recording guy, um, gave me his jazz master, and he's like, "Oh, just like strum the strings on this and give this like whammy bar just a subtle bend." I was like, "Oh, that's weird." Like at the time, I played a Telecaster, so like a whammy bar was so foreign to me,
Sure.
and he didn't really tell me why he had that idea or where it came from. It was just like a thing that he had. And then I found out later on he played in a bunch of shoegaze bands like in the 90s and stuff. But that was kind of the first time I'd ever done that specific movement and sound. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I kind of just like sort of furrowed it away in my brain for like later, but I didn't have a guitar that could do it. And then I kind of had like a light bulb moment later on. I was like, oh, that's what that is. Oh, shit. Like, cool. But kind of fast forwarding into like the early 2010s, when I was sort of trying to achieve that sound, I had like a minimal pedal board. Like I had like a tuner, uh, an overdrive, and a delay, like a Boss delay. And I was like, oh, how can I get something out of this? And it was really just like trying every sort of setting that I could on the delay to try get something remotely close, and just like diming out the overdrive and the AC30 I had, and just basically trying to get the best approximation with what I had. So at that point, I wasn't like, a gearhead who was trying to buy all the pedals. I just sort of really tried to make it work with what I had. And it was
Right.
only kind of, a few years later when I actually started to delve into, there's all these pedals that can help me and all these rack units can help me achieve this. But at first, it was just like a really ham-fisted approach at trying to make what I had work.
So as somebody who's released, a couple EPs, a full length split, you just have a new double single, if you will, that just came out. And we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But are you comfortable where you are, like in the genre? Are you somebody who's always trying to evolve your sound or just perfect like the sound that you have? Like, how do you see yourself musically,
Yeah,
I guess?
I was really happy with the album with Hearts Grow Dull. Like, I thought that what I wanted to achieve there, I achieved to the level that I was happy with. And it was kind of that like heavy wall of sound, kind of quite typical shoegaze in a lot of parts sound. And then between then and now, we sort of had a bit of a detour. I tried to do a few different things, and that kind of started with the Warm split. When Warm asked us to do a split with them, we just come off the back of Hearts Grow Dull, which is kind of like heavy. But then when we were faced with doing a split with them, and they are like heavy, like at least compared to us, so it didn't make sense to me to try like go heavier like than we had, because we still would have sounded small compared to them. So like I decided to go in like the opposite direction and like bring in acoustic guitars and maybe tap a bit more of that like Savlaki kind of sound, which I'd kind of wanted to do for a while. And that was cool, and it allowed for a bit more kind of like, I don't know, finesse and layering, I guess. And so that was
Hmm.
like nice to do. But after doing that for a little bit, kind of felt that like a little pull to go back to the heavier stuff again. But I think this time, or what I'm trying to focus on more this time, is like a little bit more immediacy with the songs, a bit more like tighter songwriting, sort of using the wall of sound as less of a crutch like I sometimes did. I think like I think sometimes I would, if I was at a loss of what to do, I'd just make it sound washier. So I'm trying to be a bit like a little bit more intentional with my parts now. And I think like, like I said, I'm not the most confident guitarist, but I feel like, with every release and every song, I'm getting more confident. So like I'm being a bit more, I guess, intentional with my guitar parts and vocal melodies, and trying to, bring my vocals a little bit more forward, hide a bit less. So I think the new songs are becoming a bit more, I don't know, pointed and, I don't know what the word is, but yeah.
More, I don't want to say song oriented, but less relying on effects to get your point across.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I feel like I've always been pretty pop focused in my songwriting. Like I don't know that I have the ability, and I think I have limited patience with kind of like real drone kind of pedaling on a certain note stuff that goes on for 10, 15 minutes. Like that's never been my approach.
Yeah, mine either.
But I always like the sort of the pop structures more.
I know you're working on songs for the follow-up album. How far along are you on that, or whatever you're comfortable talking about? I know you're working on stuff on your own.
I mean, I've been writing slowly. I always do everything slowly. The snail on the split single, not the split single, but like the A B whatever we did recently, is a bit of an in joke to myself about how slow I work. But I've been writing since the album finished. 4 years now.
April 2018, I think.
Yeah. So like it's been a long process. And at this point, I feel like the album's like maybe like 95% demoed. We've certainly got enough material to pick from a record. And it's been that way for probably 12 to 18 months now, I guess. Like I think that, as the same with so many people, the pandemic's put everything on sort of hold for a bit, but it has afforded me a bit of time to write and record and reflect, and sort of, I guess I've always been someone who's wanted to get stuff out, like when I say quickly, I mean like when it's done, get it out kind of thing. And
I know it's torture. It's hard.
Yeah. So I think the fact that it hasn't really been totally realistic to release an album up until, recently, has kind of been good. It's afforded me a bit of space to sort of, yeah, I guess reflect on the songs and not just sort of push it out there. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, it's like it's mostly demoed.
How's your process? Are you picking up a guitar, plug it through your effects, finding some cool sounds, and then, oh, this could be a verse? Or are you picking up an acoustic or a clean guitar and just strumming away until you write something cool and going, okay, I can layer stuff to this and make this into something later, but it came from a simple idea on acoustic or whatever.
Yeah, I think we're so similar. Like we're super similar in the songwriting part of it, but I think the difference is I don't start on acoustic guitar. Whenever I pick up an acoustic guitar, my brain and fingers just default to folk. Like I just like, oh, I've written an Elliott Smith song. Like that's great. Um, but I love that. But if I'm writing blush response, it needs to be an electric. And I'm not like I don't sit down and sort of dial in like a crazy effects and stuff and sort of just get inspiration that way. All I need is like a reverb and some drive, and I'll come up with a guitar part. And then I'm exactly the same as you. Like I'll come up with some chorus reverse. I'll lay that into. I use Logic, and then I'll work on the chorus, and then I'll do what you do and just literally like block, copy, and paste stuff around, like like an electronic musician kind of thing. It's a really good analogy, actually. I hadn't thought about it that way. And just layer it, like do a bit of drums here. Oh, this bit needs bass now, so I'll put some bass here, and then I've heard a new guitar part. So it's a very non-linear way of writing. I think it's not like you have a guitar thing that you go from beginning to end, and you've got a vocal melody, and then you're like,
Right.
it's building it up laterally rather than linearly, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if that works.
But I know what you mean. So
yeah.
if I had to still write a song from start to finish before I could record anything, I'd never get anything done at this point.
Yeah.
New shoegaze oriented gear comes out all the time, whether it's a plug-in or a pedal. Is that something you keep up with, the new gear, or are you just kind of, you got your own setup and this is what you use, or are you constantly changing up your gear and as you go along? What's your
I go through stages. Sometimes I get restless with my gear and I'd start to like really delve into it and research what's new and go down the wormhole of like YouTube gear demos and stuff. For the past like 2 years, I've been pretty happy with my setup. But in the past like month, I've just felt that itch again. So I've been like trying to find a new reverb and a new drive. And it's been really sort of delving down that path again with pedals and like that have become popular in the sort of dream pop shoegaze scene. I think I like the ones that are little oddities that people kind of find, and then the users cherish them and make them into like this shoegaze icon rather than having been designed for it. Like the one that comes to mind is the Zoom MS50 or MS70. Like that was never designed to be like a shoegaze pedal.
No.
It's just kind of this weird cheap multi-effects pedal, but they're like
Right.
they've become so treasured amongst like so many shoegaze guitarists that I know, because they do it so well. And I just like that people have found a way to make a pedal that maybe wasn't necessarily designed for the cause to be the perfect thing.
I record my stuff dry. If it's a clean guitar or if it's a distorted guitar, I record that into Pro Tools. But unless it's something off the loomer where it's an obvious effect that I can't achieve any way else, all that's in Pro Tools. It's all plugins for me. If you hear delays, reverbs, choruses, flangers, phasers, tremolo, any of that stuff, to me it's all plugins. So what's your take on that?
I think I'm actually in this case the opposite a little bit. The vast majority of my sound is outboard from pedals, whether I'm recording an amp or going direct in. It's like the drive, the chorus, the delays, the reverbs are all like outboard pedalboard stuff. And my plug-in mixing is just sort of making it sit nice, like a bit of room sound to the guitars or a bit of like slapback delay, or there'll be a few rare instances where I'm like, oh, this guitar could be more chorusy, so I'll just put like a chorus patch on there, which is kind of weird because it will make the amp sound chorusy too. But it is what it is. Like if it works, it works. But the vast majority of my characteristic sound would be pedals and pedalboard stuff, whereas the the mixing sound is just like subtle plugins.
For me, it just, I don't know. I feel it scares me.
I see the appeal to doing it your way. Like I do, like I like the idea of having more granular control on the mix, but also I think that would also open me up to a world of like second guessing and forever tweaking stuff. Like if I've just got a dry sound I'm working with, I could tweak that till, I don't sleep. Like
when you're writing your songs, are you trying to stick to a basic pop song structure, verse, chorus, some sort of middle, first, chorus, end? Or another structure I use is first, chorus, then basically the whole middle to the ending is a completely different thing that has nothing to do with the first half of the song. Or do you just start writing and just you let the song go where it wants to go?
I'm very much like guided by the pop song structure. Like in some ways, almost to a fault. Like it's a checkbox. Like, oh, I have a verse now. Oh, I've got a pre-chorus now. I've got a chorus now. Okay, great. Now it needs a bridge, kind of thing. There are times when I let myself go away from that a little bit. There's a few songs that have demoed for the new album that are a bit more like what you said. Like you do like a verse, chorus, verse, and then the last half of the song is just completely, different. But no, I really find that having that structure helps me focus my songwriting, I guess, and come up with something that just, I don't know, is hopefully catchy and, has that listenability that you want. I think there's something comforting about that structure subconsciously to the ear that people like. So yeah, I think I do like it that way. When you're writing for Whimsical, do you take into account lyric and melody, or is that more of a Chrissy thing?
I have nothing to do with that whatsoever. So the song is completely 100% done before she even hears it.
Yeah, so I think that might be part of where I come at it from, because like if I'm writing a song, it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, end. Like that's a lot of different vocal ideas, melody structures. It comes a bit overwhelming. So if I can be like, okay, the verse is like this, and then I do essentially the same thing for the next verse, and maybe play with it a bit, and then I have a chorus I can come back to. It sort of gives me a bit of a framework to work for vocals and melody, which is the hardest part. So I think that's probably a bit where we differ.
When you're recording your guitars, are you recording an amp with a mic? Are you recording virtual, or using IRs? What's a combination of both? What's your approach with that?
Like I've never been super comfortable recording amps and stuff at home, and also I live in like a small townhouse, so it's not like the best environment for recording loud guitars. Sure. The album was probably like 80% like real amps and mics. I went up to my folks' place. They live up in the hills where there's less people around, and I could like kind of spend more time making obnoxious loud noise and trying to get the best out of what I had. But then since Hearts Grow Dull, probably almost all of it has been in box, like amp sims and stuff. Just because it's so much more convenient and versatile. Like just I can record at any hour here, and I can, there's an immediacy to it. I don't need to like get my cab, set it up, get the sound, put the mic, experiment with mic positions, get it into the computer. It's just like plug and go. Is there any piece of gear that you think is vital to your sound? I think so, yeah. So I would probably say that the Zoom, the multi-stomp, the MS-50, I mean, it's been on everything. Like it's kind of been with me the whole time. And that one plug, like that one patch I made, I called it a wash with several H's. Whenever you hear like a real, like it's kind of the soft focus sound, that's that. And I don't think I could do without that. It's just everywhere on my stuff. So do you feel still connected to shoegaze, dream pop? Or do you feel like musically you've expanded beyond it? Or yeah, I still definitely like love the shoegaze sound, and it's absolutely informs a lot of what I'm writing. But I think I am slowly not moving away from it, but kind of changing the way I use it a bit. I mean, the early stuff, like the EPs were very straight down the line shoegaze, at least in my mind. And a lot of the Hearts Grow Dull was. But I think I'm trying to do some different stuff. I think it comes down to that sort of trying to write songs that are a bit more kind of focused and immediate. So it's still gonna sound like shoegaze at the end of the day. Like that's kind of what I love and what I do. But I am trying to kind of changed the place in which I sit in respect to like the traditional shoegaze stuff.
So how's the local scene in Australia as far as shoegaze, dream pop? Um, how's that all out there?
I think it comes in waves. I think like going back as Blush Response was just forming, there was a really strong scene going on. I think one of the early sort of, I guess, landmark points of the band was we went over to play a show in Melbourne called Shoegaze, and it started off as like a Cure tribute show, but it just kind of turned into this like shoegaze festival thing, which was really cool. And we had bands from all over the country come and play. And it was put together by Gabe of Low Tide, I mentioned before. And it's, I don't know, it was just really cool because I think Australia is a bit unique or different from like America and Europe in as much as like we've got several capital cities with a lot of like good music scenes going on, but we're quite distant from each other. It's a long drive to get from city to city, and there's not a lot in between. So it's a very different sort of touring landscape. And to have all these bands sort of coming together from this, what, you know, is ostensibly a niche genre, was just like a really cool thing. And I think that sort of made a really strong connection between a lot of bands at the time. Then there was a bit of a lull. I think it's coming back now. I think it probably goes in like release cycles of the bigger bands' albums, like, you know, your Flying Colours and your Low Tides and stuff like that.
Does it feel more of like a Australian thing, or does it still feel like you guys are separated and, you know, you're not really sure of each other or know of each other?
I think there is a bit of a like a unity amongst bands from Australia, like regardless of what state you're in. And I think the connections and the lines drawn between the states are pretty strong. Like I'm still like super close with a lot of Melbourne shoegaze bands. And Melbourne's the next state, well, the next city, the state's Victoria, next to us, but it's still like a 9.5 hour drive.
After doing 10 of these episodes, I finally showed it to people, released it or whatever, but I have a Spotify playlist called Among the Clouds, and I ask all the artists who come on here to choose their favorite dream pop shoegaze song. It doesn't have to be your favorite, but it could be like if you were going to show somebody who's never heard the genre before, you know what I mean? You're like, this is a song. This is going to show you what this is about. What song is it and why? And then what's the favorite song you've been a part of? I'm assuming it's a Blush Response song, but you know,
Yeah.
And why, I guess.
I think I'm going to go a little bit left field, I guess, and they'll probably roll their eyes since I'm picking one early back in their catalog, which is kind of, you know, a long time ago for them. But I'd probably say Wavy Gravy by Flying Colours, Australian band. Gotta support them. But I heard that really early on, and to me, that has so many ingredients of what defines shoegaze. Like the pop song structure, the swirling like wall of sound guitars, the harmonies, the male female vocal harmonies. Like it's just such a crystalline representation to me of what shoegaze is. So I think I would definitely hold that up as like the perfect example of what the genre brings, I guess. My own favorite, I mean, the temptation is to say one of the songs I just put out. Like I'm really happy with those songs. I think Vertigo is like one of the strongest songs I've written. But I'm not going to do that because that sounds like I'm promoting a new single. But I think probably Hearts Grow Dull, like the title track off that record. There's just something about that song. It's not the most complex song I've written. It's actually like a really simple song. But it just came together so naturally, and I really like the lyrics of that song. Like they mean a lot to me, I guess. And they're just the way the kind of the feeling of the whole thing came together. Like it just sort of represents a really specific point in time for me, and a point where I was like really happy with like how I was producing, how I was writing, what I was communicating. I think that's just like a good example of like Blush Response, I guess.
Do you have a song that you put out that became bigger, or one of the songs you're more known for that you didn't think was going to be what you were known for, or it was like a happy accident and like, wow, this kind of took off bigger, you know, than I expected? Or is there a song that you thought was going to be um, more of a well-known song and then kind of just was under the radar and you were kind of like, oh shit,
Mm.
it didn't pan out how I thought it was.
Yeah, I guess we've never had a smash hit, so like it's not like I'm not talking about this from like a you know uh, a success point of view in terms of like mainstream success or anything like that. We don't have that, but
No, that's not for
um,
either of us.
no, but yeah. So I think "Without You," which is from that second EP, like I always liked it. It was a cool song. Like it had some cool parts, but that's been such a mainstay for us. And every time we talk about cutting it from the set, either someone in the band's gonna be like, "No, like don't cut it," or like they'll be, if we don't play it, someone will be like, "Oh, why didn't you play Without You? Like, what's going on there?" So that's kind of one that we've kept around because people seem to like it, which is really nice.
Mhm.
Um, the one that reverse of that, I think, would be um, "Fall Apart" from Hearts Grow Dull. Like when I was writing that, I was so excited about it. I was like, "This is sick! Like this song kicks." And it just had this like the really cool bridge section, which is like heavier than a lot of what I'd written at that point. And I was super excited to play it live, but we just could never make it work. I don't know what it was about it, if it was like the structure or the way it changed, or I don't know. But we tried to play it a few times live, and it just flopped every time.
All right. Thanks, Alistair. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me and doing the show. I appreciate it. And um, yeah, it was cool talking to you in person, sort of, as a fan of your band and what you've done. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, thanks for having me. It was good to nerd out over some gear. I don't get to do a lot of these kind of interviews where I sort of get to talk about the songwriting in such depth, and it's been cool. Like I've watched like a bunch of the previous episodes, and there's some bands that I just really like, so it's cool to be part of this.
It's important to me to do to interview people that I'm a fan of, or you know what I mean. So yeah, thanks again for doing the show.
Anytime.
I'd like to thank Alistair for doing the show. It was pretty cool to talk to him after we've messaged each other for years. It's one of the cool things about doing the show is kind of talking to people you admire or appreciate their work and probably have talked to in some way in the past. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.